Welcome to Urban Strategy in the Present Tense. My name is Andrew Zitcer. I'm an associate professor in the Westphal College of Media, Arts, and Design at Drexel University, and I'm the program director of the Masters in Urban Strategy program. This webinar is brought to you by those entities and powered by the Lindy Institute for Urban Innovation. We do these approximately once a month, a few times in the fall and a few times in the spring, and welcome to one of our latest editions. I want to introduce our two distinguished guests. We have with us today Rachel Wenrick and Charles Lomax. I will read a little bit about each of them and introduce you to them therewith. Rachel Wenrick has worked as a waitress, a roofer, and a teacher. All of these jobs require paying attention. Being a writer has trained her to look for the through lines that intersect to make a larger narrative. As founding director of Writers' Room, Drexel University Community Literary Arts Program, she had the vision and continues to build the cross-sector partner network needed to realize Second Story Collective, an arts-centered model for intergenerational co-living. Second Story is an alternative strategy for addressing two of our community's most pressing needs: affordable housing and aging in place options. She received an MFA from Columbia University School of the Arts and is the co-author of singer and activist Angelique Kidjo's memoir, Spirit Rising. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Andrew.
Charles Lomax has been with the Lomax companies and its predecessors for over 25 years and is a partner with the firm with responsibility for its real estate activities. Previously, Mr. Lomax was instrumental in the growth and ongoing management of the Lomax company's healthcare management businesses. Upon the successful exit of those healthcare businesses, he co-founded Lomax Real Estate Partners, LP, a commercial and residential real estate development firm. Under his leadership, LREP has developed and managed a number of residential and commercial projects throughout the Philadelphia region. As chairman and CEO of LREP, he provides oversight for the firm's real estate activities, including, but not limited to, business development, land planning, and product design. Mr. Lomax serves on the board of the John Bartram Association, the Philadelphia Accelerator Fund, Drexel University's Presidential Real Estate Advisory Council, and the West Laurel Hill Funeral Home and Management Company. He also serves on the board of directors of several of the portfolio companies owned and operated by the Lomax Companies, LP, and is a trustee of the Lomax Family Foundation. He has a BA in economics from Guilford College, Greensboro, North Carolina. Mr. Lomax is also a member of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity. Welcome, Charles Lomax.
Hi, it's good to be here. Thank you.
So we're here today to talk about a joint project between Rachel and Charles and also learn more about their backgrounds and histories that brought them together. So I'd like to start by asking you both to give us a brief sense of the project that you're working on together. What is it and what are the issues that are at stake? What are your goals? And Rachel, if you could kick us off.
Sure. Thanks again. So Second Story Collective is our joint project, and we're doing it with really a whole host of partners, university and community partners. But it's an art-centered model for intergenerational co-living. So it's really a natural extension of Writers' Room's ongoing work and an update of boarding and home sharing practices that were once really common across the country. In our version, student home sharers rent from neighborhood residents at below market rates and while sharing responsibilities, and this creates new income and reduces social isolation. But what takes our model from transactional to transformative is really that art-centered, that home sharers participate in ongoing arts programming, whether that's writing and storytelling, but also visual arts and culinary arts and music and dance. And we've been developing this with our neighborhood partners since about 2016, and we're now entering the pilot stage. Charles, do you want to talk about the issues and the goals?
Yeah, so, we are, Lomax Real Estate Partners is doing a larger development along on the site. And, really one of the things that sort of drew me into this whole concept is the idea of multi-generational housing and how important it is for folks, for everybody, for the community. What is really interesting is the ability to sort of change how university adjacent development is viewed, how it is executed, how it is engaged with by the community. and the ability to do something that can be developed into a scalable model. I think that's kind of the thing that kind of piqued my interest, is something that can be scaled and replicated, and that could be transformative, really. So
Thanks for that. We'll get into a little bit more detail as we go along, but thank you for the overview of the two sides to this very important project.
Sure.
Rachel, can you talk a little bit about how the Writers' Room got involved in thinking about housing and urbanism? It began as a creative arts program and is still a creative arts program, but how did that extend into thinking about the urban scale and the neighborhood scale?
Sure. So Writers' Room actually began we launched in 2014 with the Dornsife Center for Neighborhood Partnerships. The program was created really in a response to a question from Drexel's president, John Fry, who wondered what a program would look like, a writer's house kind of program would look like if it had community involvement from the beginning, from the very founding. And so Writers' Room is the answer to that what if. So we are students and faculty and staff and alumni and neighbors, and everything we do is co-created. We're 18 to 80s and diverse in just about every way you can imagine. And so, how we got into housing is really at the end of our first season at the Dornsife Center. We held our first book release party of anthology, and it was standing room only crowd, and we had music and food and flowers, and it was really, really a wonderful experience. And it was that moment of like, this is what art can do, like your heart rises in your chest and you think, we're all connected and we can go anywhere. We can do anything. And the next day I got an email from one of our founding members, Carol McCullough, and she and her family were being displaced because a developer had bought her apartment building to turn it to student housing. And so that was really the moment that we understood that we're really implicated in each other's stories. And while it's really wonderful to create community through art and storytelling and sharing meals, if we were going to create community, we needed to act as a community. And the seed for a second story was planted.
I have a follow-up, Rachel. It's not like the training that we get as faculty members to work in community necessarily, although there is incredible support for that work at Drexel, but you have to seek it out. It's not the training we get in grad school. It's not the training we get in our MFAs and our PhD programs. And so, at what level was this improvisation for you? At what level was this sort of like something that, in your bio, you said you needed to know how to listen to people and pay attention? How much of this, how did this skill set sort of evolve for you?
That's such a good question. It really, part of it was a gut response, but a gut response only gets you so far. And there really was a moment when I was first invited into this conversation about creating Writers' Room with Lucy Kerman and a number of our colleagues. And when they started talking about the what if, I really had the sense of like, oh, actually, this is all of who I am. I could bring to this work, and that meant somebody who was working class and somebody who had a very diverse work experience before graduate school and actually since. And I bring all of that, the formal training and the informal training, and the gut work and the research and the creativity to the work.
And I'm sure it continues to evolve. Yeah, I mean, as you grow this program, I've watched your skills and capacities evolve in incredible ways.
And it's been really wonderful to get that support here at Drexel for that kind of evolution. That's not the job that I came into, but I was able to create a pathway, and then that pathway was supported, and that's been really, really exciting and really rewarding.
Thank you for that. We got a question in the chat asking us to provide some basic facts of the project. I assume they're talking about the Village Square on Haverford. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Charles, and ask you to tell us more about this Village Square project, a new development in the Mantua neighborhood. Can you give us a sense of what the Village on the Square is and what need it serves, or what your objectives are for the project?
Yeah, so it's interesting how we started. The community wanted a full service grocery store. So we started with that as sort of the corpus of the concept. And then as it has evolved over time, we wanted to build 225 units of apartments. We wanted to build a grocery store. And the community said, stop, wait a second, slow down. No, it's too many houses. We want less density. We want more parking. We want home ownership, and we want some affordability. So I said, okay, we'll change our plan. And so we took the number of units and cut it in half. Then we said, okay, we're going to do 18 for sale units. 16 of them had parking, 16 townhouses with parking, grocery store. And we're going to move the radio station WRD over there with a coffee shop in there with a community-based reading concept in it. And then over time, it evolved where the grocery operator did need 2 stories. So we put an ambulatory medical center on the 2nd story above the grocery store, adult medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN, behavioral health, dentistry, podiatry. Then in talking to Rachel and different folks over at Drexel, they told me about this writer's room concept and this intergenerational housing thing. I said, wow, that's great. That's a great concept. We can take these townhouses and make them duplexes and create an accessory dwelling unit with these units, and so that and design them so that they're age friendly. And so that's basically what we've done. You know, what's happened, and believe it or not, as a result of the pandemic and the delay that it's caused, other than the crazy increase in interest rates, each iteration of the project's gotten better. We got the ambulatory medical center. We got this concept with the writer's room, this partnership with Drexel, which I think is just phenomenal. Understanding what's happening demographically everywhere with seniors aging. You know, so it's a mixed-use, mixed-income project with affordable housing, with naturally occurring workforce rental units, with home ownership, with housing for seniors, healthcare, and a pretty strong response to food insecurity. So I think that because of the partnership with Drexel, because of what's happened as a result of the delay, each iteration of the project, it's gotten better and more well-rounded, and I think provides a much fuller benefit to the community.
So a couple of follow-ups about the project. For those of us who aren't architects or designers, what makes a house age-friendly?
So, you know, you have to, first of all, it has to be accessible. Ramps, you know, have to be able to get in the house. Most basically, you have to be able to make it wheelchair accessible. You have to be able to get in the doorways, hallways, and the bathrooms. All those things make them, you know, railing, all kinds of things that you can do if it's planned that way from the very beginning. So you want to make them accessible.
And we've actually been seeing that playing out, you know, in Writer's Room. Our home here on campus is at Ross Commons, which is the ADA building. That's one of the reasons why we were thrilled to have this as our home. But because we have a lot of seasoned folks, you know, with us every day, we really get to see how that plays out and what folks with different mobility issues, you know, what their needs are. And so we've been working with Dee Nicholas, who's one of our faculty partners, on an age-friendly audit of our space, and all of that is really informing kind of how we're moving forward together. And we're doing that as part of Drexel's Age-Friendly University Initiative and the Age Well Collaboratory, and they've been incredible partners.
It's really important to be thoughtful about aging and not make assumptions that ADA is the be-all and end-all of the standard, and we can move, you know, beyond that into real livability and ability to thrive in these spaces.
The other thing that I think is really important is the social aspect of it, that is really meaningful, and the fact that what is being intentionally created is a multi-generational environment where with an art-focused component to it, where that really sort of feeds a cultural component to what's being created in a really meaningful way. I think that, you know, one of the most important things of aging is social interaction. And so that's being designed, I think, intentionally into what we're doing, which I think is really important.
Can we talk more about how those interactions will happen in terms of the ability of students to live with elders in the community and the ability of people to interact with each other through the writers' room? How do people get involved in being in these houses? How will they interact when they actually are in them?
So those are great questions. So some of that we're developing with our partners who have you know, different expertise in aging and in housing and all of those things. But we do know over the last, you know, we're now in our 9th year, what people really appreciate in terms of arts programming, in terms of, you know, regularity and co-creation, and what they really enjoy. And so really what we'll do in building this out is do that in partnership with the folks who are piloting these houses with us, instead of assuming like this is how it should go, is building it out with them, you know, because we do know from our experience that story sharing is really what coheres our community. But you know, how much of that do people want to do on a regular basis? How much freedom do they want to have? You know, how much of it really feels like something that nourishes and feeds us and excites us, and how much, you know, where does it tip over to being like, oh, this is too much, right?
Yeah.
Because we're really looking at that continuum sort of on every level, right? Of involvement, of age, of public to private space. And it's been, you know, we've been doing that for 8 years in our programming, and now we're building it out in the world together.
Is the intention that young people or students will live in these accessory dwelling units?
We hope so, right?
That's the idea. So it's almost a reversal of the so-called granny flat.
But then, right, but then as people's needs change, that can change, right?
Right.
So it's really more, we've been working with Jung, who's a Drexel alum and also a faculty member, and he had this concept of the flexible house. And we know that as we all age, that, you know, the way we use our houses changes. And so we're trying to accommodate that in some of this design as a flexibility for, you know, for this could work for younger families, right? Who, you know, maybe that could be really wonderful to have. I mean, for those of us who have children at home,
Oh
you know,
my gosh.
it would be wonderful to have a college student who's been vetted through a program and wants to live in community, who can meet your kid after school and help with homework and get dinner started, right? While you finish up work and you come in and things are underway, right? And for our students, you know, who've been involved with this work for years, we know that they have this incredible ability. And they're craving this kind of experience. Everyone wants more social connection, but they also want to be able to contribute meaningfully to their communities.
We got a couple of questions in the chat. One was, would you consider this a creative version of co-housing? Is that an adequate descriptor for this, or a partial descriptor?
Yeah, I think that's great description. Yeah.
And the second question is, would you expand a little bit, Rachel, on the writer's room concept? Can you talk a little bit about some of the activities that occur in writer's room and some of the sort of processes and products that you've created over the years to sort of build this communal expression?
Absolutely. So, well, we began with monthly workshops at the Dornsife Center, which we still hold before the community dinner every month. And then from that, we grew additional programming. So we now have a program called Tripod that's sponsored by Canon that brings together high school students, our college students, and our elder neighbors together in writing and photography. And they've been documenting their lives and their visions of Philadelphia. In fact, they're going to have a show. They have a show right now in the Drexel Picture Gallery. It's a retrospective, and they're going to have another show at PAFA this summer. So look for that, opening July 4th weekend. So Tripod it's become kind of a signature or core program that meets weekly. But we also, you know, we offer courses. We're developing a new course of study. And we also engage in research with our partners across the university. Since 2018, we've been working with Ayanna Allen Handy from the School of Education and the founder of the Justice-Oriented Youth Joy Lab. on community-led participatory action research. So first on displacement, now on the power of public arts programming to drive civic innovation, and now an NSF funded investigation of civic innovation and this project. So we're kind of a full service shop.
Yeah, it's really powerful to see the support that the Writers' Room and the Second Story Collective is starting to attract, because, you know, while funding isn't always an even playing field, when you start to see things attract these sorts of support, it means that you're building partnerships and alliances that demonstrate that the project has been carefully constructed and has since 2014 built its network of relationships, and funders are starting to see that and respond in kind. Let me ask a question of Charles, which is to go back to the project a little bit. Why did you want to include WURD and the coffee shop in the component of the real estate? I mean, that to me seems like it's aligned with the values of the Writers' Room project, but I wanted to learn more about why WURD, why a coffee shop that has a kind of writing component in it.
So so WRD is basically become sort of the voice of the African American community in Philadelphia. It is such a powerful medium, which is which is unique, and to have it to be able to give the community a voice to express their thoughts and respond to the things that are happening in the city and around the country, really, I think is very, very powerful. I know that the original founder, Cody Anderson, was the one who talked us into buying the station. And I remember Cody told my father one time, he said, "Doc, you can't give everybody money, but you can give everybody a voice." And that's sort of the underlying theory around WRD. And so the idea is to have the coffee shop concept is called the Reading Room, housed in the URD building, and for them to do combined community programming. And my sense is it's probably going to also involve the Writers' Room. You're going to be able to have this space that, as it's being designed, can be opened up, and you can have events and do different things. But the idea is to make it sort of a destination for the community, so that they can come and see what's going on, hear what's going on, and really add voice to sort of what's going on in the city. So that's why it was important to have it there. I can't get that building up soon enough. My sister is the general manager who runs it, and is like, when is the building going to be done? When is the building going to be done? Yeah. So anyway, I think it's going to be a tremendous, with the grocery store, with the medical center, with the Writers' Room, the Reading Room, and the radio station. You're going to have something, and the adjacent housing, you'll have something pretty interesting for the Mantua community.
Now, I think it's interesting to think about the community's response over time, sort of asking for different things of the project when you were bringing it to the table, Charles. And instead of actually decreasing density, you did decrease density at one point, but then you added density by turning the townhomes into duplexes. And I guess my question was, how did that relationship with the Mantua community evolve? And when it comes to the affordability component, how affordable is affordable, and what were you able to achieve in terms of your financing goals and your packaging of this as a sustainable development for the neighborhood?
So it's a cornucopia of financing. It's like financing whack-a-mole. The challenge to any project like this is that often capital sources don't necessarily play well together, and so you have to get a whole bunch of different things and stack them. And so right now, the project has had to be divided into 4 separate components. There's the commercial space, which is being financed with new market tax credits. The residential rental units are being financed through a HUD, what's called a HUD 221D4 loan. The The LIHTC units are being financed through Pennsylvania Housing Finance 4% tax credits through PHFA, and the home ownership units are just a revolver that we have to just build them and then sell them. And they're being, for the home ownership piece, the important part, that's probably the most important components of the project, because it's rare that you have an opportunity on a piece of real estate so close to a university center that you can put on the market below market. We're going to throw the land in for free. We're going to try to come up with all kinds of structured and grants in the financing to allow people who historically have not been able to own properties be able to buy these units. And we are, we're not sure whether we have to condominiumize them, how we have to do it, but the goal is to make them available to folks within the community. Because it's a wealth creator. I mean, that's one of the most important things that, I read stuff where they say people should invest in the stock market, not buy a house. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because the stock market goes up and down, and real estate values in this area, this location in particular, are going to continue to appreciate because it's so close to the university. So.
Well, and because you're trying to build a village there that is, going to consist of amenities on site and community, partnerships, and sort of like a lot of value added that makes it different from a lot of the sort of big box developments that are going up around the city that are sort of a different style.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I've seen anyway, as I've looked at grocery stores and so forth over the last few years, is that they're getting smaller and being more community centric, so people can walk to the store, get what they need, and walk home, instead of pulling your car up to someplace and getting 2 months worth of groceries. The idea is to try to create a more walkable community.
I don't know if you have numbers for this, Charles, but we're getting a question in the chat about how affordable is affordable. What defines affordability?
So what we're signing up to is 80% of area median income. That's almost middle income. That to me, that's too high. I mean, if you could get 60% area median income, 50% area median income, that would be, and I don't know if you're going to be able to get people, be able to do that. But the goal is to try to get the AMI, make them as accessible as possible. And so that you have to find philanthropic money, you have to find grant money, you have to find all kinds of money to put together a capital stack to make them affordable for the down payment. Once you get the down payment, if you have it structured with an additional unit, then the additional units will create additional revenue to help offset the mortgage payment. So that's the concept.
Yeah, affordability is always a challenge in an environment where construction costs are high and land costs and all the other associated costs. And as you said, the financing for affordable projects, it has to be a patchwork and a cornucopia, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at some of the comments. Yeah, affordable. How affordable is affordable? Community. So you have financial institutions that are really paying attention to this. They're philanthropic institutions that are really paying attention to not just the home ownership component, but the whole project. And so my hope is that we'll be able to identify sufficient philanthropic sources. This is to help offset that and find those unencumbered funds to meet the down payment requirements for these folks. That's the goal.
Right. Well, I mean, that's important work. And I think, again, this is not just a standard template of a developer. This is something that will be seen and noticed by different kinds of investors and different kinds of partners, hopefully, because of the mission-driven nature of a lot of what the partnership entails.
Yeah, and there are components to the project that are more profitable than other ones. And I mean, I have excellent partners. I have excellent partners and people that have invested in the project, and they expect a decent return, but they don't have to retire on this. They are in this to they want to make their return, but they also are they are really, really humanistically decent people, and they want to help and want to do the right thing. So I consider myself extremely fortunate to have the partners I have, because they get what we're trying to do.
Well, on that theme of partnership, I wanted to come back to Rachel, and I wanted to ask about relationships, and I wanted to sort of ask both about how your relationship with Charles evolved, and also what have been some of the key relationships for you in moving Writers House along. Like, who have been some of the folks that have inspired you to grow this model and develop it?
That's a great question. Gosh, there are so many folks. The thing is, like, relationships are absolutely essential. And I don't mean that in like an insider way, but just like relationships as the base unit of systems level change. They are, I mentioned Ayanna Allen Handy before. She always says that relationships are everything, right? And they really are what has allowed us to build the trust to attempt a project like this, to embolden us to keep fighting when it's like, well, there's really nothing out there like this, but folks just go gentrification and throw up their hands, right? They have really been essential. And I mean, really the most essential relationship or partnership that we have, and Charles and I and all of our partnerships is with the Mantua Civic Association, because this project wouldn't be happening if it wasn't in partnership with them. That was also slow in building and growing. It was one of the most critical moments early on in this project.
Yeah.
So when you say it evolved, I mean, I don't need to know all the details, but sort of like what brought you to the place where you can call it like a great partnership between you and Mantua Civic?
I would say that what I would say a great partnership, a great relationship with all of our partners is really like it is based in trust. It's been built over time, but that we really show up for each other, right? It's not like nobody's there for the ribbon cutting, right? Like we're all there like sweating and hustling together in and out, right? So yes, we get together, and we celebrate our sharing our stories, and we have dance parties and we do all those things. But it's also like if someone in our community is having a hard time, like it's what can we do? How can we show up? And how can we contribute? How can we help? And that's on a very, very small scale, person to person, but then you amplify that or you multiply that throughout our constellation. And it's really, really powerful. And so I think why we can say we have a really great partnership with Dwayne Drummond and Gwen Morris and Sam Samuels is like we listen to each other, we hear each other out, but we do more than listening is like than we do, right? And we can have those hard conversations, and sit in difficult and uncomfortable conversations and work things through.
It's interesting because I've been dealing with this for maybe six years, and it's been an excellent experience for me. One of the best decisions I made as it relates to this project is early on, I was told to hire somebody as a community interface for me. I said, I don't need anybody community interface for me. I'll do it myself. And I went to the meetings, and inevitably, whenever you go to a community meeting, when you start out, it can be hostile. And I went to the meetings and kept going, and it's inevitably over time the relationship starts to develop and evolve, and you start seeing each other as people. And it's just the most interesting thing for me. I think it takes 4 meetings before everybody starts to get comfortable and a level of trust starts to develop. It's over time, but that is so important. And but when you get there, then you have a real partnership, and you have the ability to sort of say, and you have the ability to hear each other. I think that's really, really important. So.
There are 2 comments in the chat. One is a prospectus available, from Pamela Rainey Lawler? And the second one is, do you need anything from the city of Philadelphia, from John Goodman? I don't know if those are questions that we can answer now, or if we need to sidebar them. But it seems like there's some interest in the chat.
So I mean, this is a partnership with the city too. I mean, the city has been, this has been a very, very, very hard process. There's been a whole lot of bumps in the road. But same thing as the relationship. Over time, we've developed what I feel is a very good relationship with the city, and it's a level of trust. There's people that have been working in the city forever, and they have been so supportive of me. I don't know if I should even name them, but she has been like, she's been there. I've been working with her for 20 years, and she's like, she's by the book, she's tough, but man, she's like rock solid. And if your stuff gets vetted by her and it's okay, you're all right. And so, I mean, those types of relationships, it takes time. It's been years, and other folks in the city have, everybody wants to do the right thing. Everybody cares about trying to help people. I think everybody in their heart of hearts really wants to help. It's just that you have rules, you have bureaucracy, and sometimes a lot of the efforts aren't as well coordinated as they need to be. But I think in everybody's heart of hearts, they want to support it, and they've been supportive and have allowed us to get to where we are now.
I want to step back and look at the neighborhood a little bit. The word gentrification was mentioned, and we talked a little bit about the story of one of the writers' room affiliates who was having to be displaced from their home. And I wonder if we could step out and just talk a little bit about the challenges facing a neighborhood like Mantua, both from the influx of investment from studentification and students and families wanting to move into Mantua, and then the kind of longstanding marginalization of that neighborhood through real estate practices and neglect. And I wonder, like, having observed Mantua at this moment over the last several years, Charles, what do you think are some of the dynamics at play, and how can this project kind of be, not the thing that, God forbid, the savior, we don't want that narrative, but something that sort of changes the story a little bit.
So gentrification is a hot button topic, and it is, the one thing I am 100% certain of is that things are going to change, and gentrification in a lot of ways is a manifestation of change. The question is, how can you control it, or how can you be a part of the change rather than be just affected by it? And so, when I do this kind of stuff, my thought is, if I lived here, what would I want? And so, if you're in an area where real estate values are appreciating, but you want to own it. You want to own something, so that you can benefit from that appreciation over time. But the issue is I've been thinking about this a lot, and the elephant in the room is the history of race and the history of how communities have been treated over time forever in this country, and how we address it. Because one thing, this is not something like the project we're doing, or what the writers' room is doing, isn't going to fix the wealth inequity that plagues this country. It's a step in the right direction, but we have to take a step back, and what the issue we have in Philadelphia, we have a poverty problem. We don't have a violence problem. We don't have a housing problem. We have a poverty problem. And I think that you have to figure out from a systemic way how you address that issue. And it's like, you can't boil the ocean, but you can start to look at, like, what the writer's room is doing, what Second Story Collective is doing is like an out-of-the-box solution to something that we know is an issue and it's happening. You know, healthcare. We know we need quality healthcare in this community, physical and behavioral health services. We know we need food security in this community, in all communities. So we're trying to do that. We know we need decent housing. We're trying to address that, but it's trying to take the silos of all these various things and take the silos down and look at this issue a little more holistically. But again, you know, the big issue is a poverty issue, and that's really the source of what we're all sort of scratching our heads about trying to figure out. That's what I think.
Well, and I think what to me speaks so powerfully about this model is the importance of culture and the arts in telling the stories of the lived experiences of the people in these communities, because it's not just about amassing wealth or changing the tide of generational neglect and marginalization. It's about having voice, and that's what you said about WURD, Charles, and that's, Rachel, what you've said about Tripod and the writer's room and the storytelling that goes on there. And it's not that in and of itself is the solution, but it is part of the rehumanization of all of the people involved.
The rehumanization, I think, is really, really critical. That's a great term.
I think that's the thing is, you know, we for so long kind of see like students pitted against neighbors, and what we experience in writer's room is we have been able to have a coherent, diverse community over years. I mean, our students come in and they get involved and they stay involved. We have people who come in at 18 and they're 28, 29 and they're still involved. They're listening on this call right now. And, you know, once we have come to know each other through sharing our histories and our stories, you really, it's very hard to turn your back on someone. And you really feel that you're in it together. And our students, you know, they don't want to displace neighbors, you know, but we need to create real viable pathways for them to make different choices.
Can you then, we have a question in the chat, can you quickly summarize the value proposition for either a potentially invested or interested student and a potentially interested senior? What's their pathway in and what's the motivation to get involved? And Rachel, maybe you could start, and then Charles, you could pick up on it.
Sure. I mean, the pathway to get involved is really everything we do is free and open to all, right? So I can drop our website link in, and you can see our events calendar. And then we are developing like the application process, and we'll be doing that with our partners. But really, it's, you know, it is two things. There is this affordability factor, right? Which is for a student, they would pay a little less than they would to, you know, than market rate to a developer, right? Everyone is feeling a housing affordability pinch, but the larger piece, and then for a neighbor, then that's income for them, right? So instead of paying a developer, they can pay a neighborhood resident. But then the other thing is really that multi-generational, intergenerational connection, you know, and being part of that constellation of folks, and having that support and reduced social isolation. I think, you know, folks are really, really craving that kind of connection. And you know, we kind of say like, it's really hard. People kind of think we're a fairy tale when we talk about writer's room, right? Until you come into the room and then you see like, oh, this is really unlike almost anything I've experienced. And you are immediately welcomed, and the culture is really, you know, it's been deeply created and it's fiercely protected, you know, and but it's really powerful to be part of that group and know that, you know, if I come into that room, whether I'm an 18-year-old, you know, senior from Paul Robeson High School, or I'm a student at Youth Build, or I'm a Drexel graduate student, or I'm a tenured faculty member, or whoever I am, who I am is enough. And I can bring my full self to this, and I can contribute, and I can benefit. And that learning happens in all directions. And once you have experienced that, it is so powerful. You know, it's addictive, and you want that to be the way the world is.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful statement of the intent behind this project and the kind of need for what we are now calling mutual aid, which has become such a big buzzword over the last couple of years. But really what you said before, which is showing up for people in ways small and large over time, really proves the concept that it's not just transactional and it's not just about lowering people's payment or generating wealth in a capitalistic framework alone, but it's about generating relationships and reducing loneliness and improving health outcomes and mental health outcomes. And we just got a comment in the chat that says it sounds like an option to help reduce some of the mental health challenges created by a sense of isolation for marginalized individuals as well. It sounds promising. And I think that's important to highlight. I want to just note folks are doing such a great job of putting questions in the chat and are having great interactions. I'm not able to get to every single one as we go through, but keep them coming and I'll try to answer them as we go. I have one more question for our panelists, and then we'll kind of wrap up with any audience questions. The first is just about, this web series, because it's part of the urban strategy program at Drexel, is to sort of talk about how you became an urban strategist. That's the name we use, right? So what were some of the big breaks along the way in terms of relationships and opportunities that allowed you to become somebody who thinks kind of thoughtfully and generously about urban justice and urban quality of life and urban care? So I'll start with you, Charles. What are some of your sort of pivotal moments?
So, first of all, it's probably by mistake, it just happened. But, so I think that, joking aside, I think my parents, both of them, were incredibly conscious, incredibly sensitive to the plight of Black people in this country, and how my father and mother, they grew up experiencing Jim Crow, and so their experience and my father was very passionate about economically empowering the African American community, and why he invested in WRD, why he invested in a lot of things. And so I think that probably has informed how I look at what I do and why I do it the way I do it. Because I think that was sort of bred into us and all of my siblings at a very early age. Another thing that, I wanted to do a big project down in Southwest Philly, went down there and went to talk to the community, and they looked at me like I had four heads. I thought, I'm a Black developer. These guys are going to embrace me like, I was whatever. And they're like, you're just another developer. And so I realized that, just because you're Black, just because whatever, that's not it. It's really developing a relationship and trust is really what allows you to engage with people on a really, and it's on a humanistic level. I was thinking that, as a species, we wouldn't have been able to survive if we didn't come together as community. And I think that, we as a community, we as a country, we as a city, it is critically important that we start to look at each other's humanness and come together as people, as a community. And because that's the only way you're going to solve some of these really hard, intractable problems is where you create a level of trust, and you got to come together and create partnerships to really do what you do. And I think that's how I got involved in what I'm doing. That sort of mindset and that philosophy that was sort of bred into us as we were kids. So
thank you for that, Charles. And Rachel, you want to take it away?
Sure. So it's funny because I had another answer that I was thinking about, but actually I will say, like, I have to shout out my parents. Like, my dad was super, super, super smart and always had his nose in a book. And it was like, you could always find an answer that way. But my mom, who's also very smart, was just smart in a very different way. And she was such a fighter. And we call her Tenacious D. So shout out to her, because honestly, every time there is an obstacle, it's like, it's really, really like, you know, what would D do? And, you know, there's kind of nothing that we can't solve if we just keep thinking about it. But there is another piece of this. There was one particular moment that I think about a lot. First of all, it's like coming to Drexel was, you know, a new awakening. I used to teach in upstate New York at Ithaca College, and it was a wonderful existence. And of course, there are issues there too, but everything is so magnified and intensified in our neighborhood environment. And to be able to do this work here is, you know, is life-changing. But there's one moment when we were first getting started with this project. I was meeting with Gwen Morris from the Mantua Civic Association. And I was really just first introducing the concept to her. And I was sweating. Oh my God, I was sweating. Because I knew that, like, if I couldn't build this partnership with them, none of this could go, right? So I was telling her about the concept, and she said, well, that's okay, a pilot house, it's one house, like, how are you going to scale it up? And I was like, oh my God. And so I started talking to her about, you know, well, this constellation and existing homeowners, and what if we could identify a socially minded, you know, developer, and imagine you were a single mom, and that's how you could become a homeowner, is through having a, you know, student home share, and you have this income property. And she said, she looked at me and she said, I was a single mom. That is how I became a homeowner. And yeah, and now I do want to age in place. And there was just something in that moment of like, just like laying it out there, and then having that moment of connection. And then cornering Charles, that was another important moment. Grace Lutheran, he came into a Mantua Civic Association meeting, and I was there to do tech support for Devaney, which is like, I'm the last person you should call for that, but I showed up. Charles came in to give a report, and he had to leave to go to another meeting, and I just followed him out, and I was like, so Charles, Mr. Lomax, and I just pitched him the idea. I kind of blocked the exit. He couldn't really leave. But, you know, that's my mom's training. So those are some critical moments. And I'm realizing, like, I'm not, all of the learning and the research and all of that came after, sort of like the gut response, and then all of the studies. I mean, we learned so much from you, Andrew, you know, and all of your work. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, you know, just the act of listening is such a radical act, you know, listening with care, listening with attention, listening not to respond, but to really hear somebody else's lived experience, and then to find out how can you participate in their thriving, and how can you participate in making life a little easier for them. And in that way, we can all achieve a kind of higher purpose for ourselves, I think. And I think that's what I think this partnership speaks to me as, is something that, you know, all of the parties are involved in some piece of this work, but the work overall is really the work of creating a more just sort of right to the city, is a term that gets thrown around a lot. So I want to sort of thank you both for engaging in this conversation and for engaging in this work. It's very meaningful. There's a lot of work ahead of you, I know. Nothing is done yet. Charles, what is the timeline that you have for putting together this development in Haverford Ave?
So, I mean, it's been permitted. We're going to start the 32 affordable units. I think we're closing thing February 24th. So that'll start shortly thereafter. And then the rest will start in the third quarter of 2023 of this year. It's going to start moving. So that's it.
Well, I wish you both the best of luck, and I know that I will be with you on the journey as a supporter and a partner and a champion. And I want to just close by letting people know that if they're interested in learning more about Drexel's Urban Strategy Master's Program, it's a 2-year master's program with classes mostly in the evening so that working people can participate. We run side-by-side classes where community members and Drexel students learn together and build trust and build relationships. We really think carefully about community engaged learning with the help of our partners at the Lindy Center and the Dornsife Center and the Writers Room and the Lindy Institute and all of our great, wonderful collaborators at Drexel. We are very excited that for the first time this fall, we're going to have a limited number of Lindy Urban Innovation Scholarships, which is going to help us significantly reduce the cost of tuition for the program for a select number of students. And so the deadline to apply for those is April 1, but we do accept admissions on a rolling basis. And I do want to sort of say that if you're excited by what you're hearing about in tonight's conversation, then maybe the Urban Strategy Program is right for you, because these are the kinds of things we talk about. They're the kinds of things we care about. They're the kinds of things we train our students in how to accomplish. If you would like to learn more, you can send me an email. My email address is my name, andrew.zitcer@drexel.edu. Maybe Hazel, you could put that in the chat. You can find Drexel Urban Strategy on the web, and we'll be back in another month with another one of these urban strategy in the present tense conversations. The next one is going to be focusing on urban sustainability in Philadelphia, and we'll announce the date and the panelists for that soon. But I just want to wrap up by thanking so much for your time, Rachel Wenrick and Charles Lomax. Your work is felt and seen and heard and appreciated, and I wish you all the best with it.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for being a believer from the very beginning.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was great talking to y'all.
And thanks to everyone who came and your great questions, and come again.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.